Hanukkah, it came from that event, and they did not knock down the Western Wall. In between, the last 2,000 years, the Seljukim, the Muslims, the Fatimim, the Armenians, so many, the Persians, so many different empires and countries occupied this area. None of them knocked down the Western Wall. There was an earthquake in Jerusalem that knocked down all the buildings, but the wall is still standing. In case you thought that the bricks, the big bricks that you see in the Western Wall is standing with cement, I have news for you. There's no cement. It's one brick on top of the other, no connection. One stand on the other, which means if there will be an earthquake, they should slide down on the people down there. But they're still standing all these years. The Torah promise, it appears in the Songs of Songs, chapter 2, verse 9. This is what it says in Hebrew, Ine ze omed kotlenu. Here is our Western world, is watching us and is standing in a present language. Here it is, which means it has to be always here it is, always. We go to the oral part of that, the Midrash, the Midrash Rabbi, it's called Midrash Shir HaShirim. And what does it say over there? It says that God swore to that wall that it will never ever fall down. So now it's even more simple than before. All we have to do, knock down the wall. You want to get rid of God and His orders? Very simple. Arrange somebody to knock down the Western Wall, and you'll find the first mistake in Judaism. After 3,320 years, you'll be famous. You'll be able to say, I'm the first one who found a mistake by knocking down the wall. Here it is. The verse is incorrect. But my suggestion to you is that doing that is playing with fire, perhaps risking your life, because God promised to the wall that He's protected, which means trying to do it is trying to interfere with the laws of God. And I don't want to say what could be the outcome, but it's very obvious. A person, a human being, as brilliant as he may be, could never even dream to write about a wall that he will never fall down. Never. And base his entire religion on that foundation. Which, remember, there were 4 walls. This wall, and this one, and that one, and the last one were all built from the same material by the same builder at the same time. Those 3 can fall down at any time. No protection. This one can never ever collapse. Do you know a person can promise such a thing and be right after 2,000 years? This Midrash was written approximately 1800 years when the wall was standing, after they knocked down the other 3 walls, and our sages wrote it, and they say we know it from tradition, that this wall that you see, all of us, this is 1800 years ago, will stay here forever. This is approximately 150 years after the Romans destroyed the temple. Everything there was no mosque there yet. Remember, Islam is only 1400 years old. So we're talking at least 450 years before the Muslims came to build their mosque there. So right there, the sages, the Jewish rabbis at that time, they told us we know in tradition, it passed from tradition, that this wall will always stay here and nobody can knock it down. Why? God is protecting us. It's the souvenir. It's a memory out of His holy temple. One other proof is basically speaking about nature. Everything in nature, when you heat it, expands. When you freeze it, it shrinks. Very interesting. There's one thing that behaves very, very strange. The water, when you heat them, they expand, they become even gas and start to fly up. However, when the water goes near freezing temperature, which is 4 degrees Celsius, 0 degrees Celsius is freezing point. It's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. But Celsius, it's 0 degrees. That's the freezing point. So now going to 4 degrees Celsius, you are very, very close to 0, to the freezing point. When the water sees that it's about to become ice, instead of continue to expand, ice is expanding, what happened to the water? They change their behaving against all odds. What will happen if the water continue to behave the way they should? The top layer of all the oceans would freeze and sink to the bottom. And the other layer will freeze and sink to the bottom. And the other top will freeze and sink to the bottom. After a few weeks, the entire ocean, which is 72% of the world is water, will be all of ice. One hard piece of ice. It's needless to say that all the fish and all the species that lives in the oceans will all die. And the worst part is that once the summer comes and they all defrost, it will make such a tsunami, it would flood the entire world and all the people will die. To prevent such a tragedy, the brilliant Creator interfered with the laws of creation and told the water, you behave according to my plan only when it gets to 4 degrees. Once it gets to 4 degrees, switch and change your behaving to the opposite side. What do you think? Is something like this possible to happen by coincidence for those who think the world is a random creation, explosion, whatever they call it? Obviously not. There are many, many examples like this. Many examples. Obviously, we don't have today the time to cover everything, but just the amount of information that I have right here in my laptop would be enough to speak 1,000 hours straight by giving one proof after the other, and it's not an exaggeration. It's accumulation of more and more proofs that I collected over the years, 15 years of work, and thank God, it's very, very brilliant. I would like to speak about the last proof for tonight, is speaking about the codes, as I mentioned it before, once or twice. As we see, since we invented computer in the last 20 years, the computer helped us to find things that we couldn't see before. Not that they were not there, they were always in the Torah, we just didn't know what to look for and how to find it. We didn't have the ability. Inventing computers is a real shortcut. What we can do in 1 second would take us sometimes 100 years without the computer. Many years ago, Rabbi Weissmandel in Europe, just before the Holocaust, he had a photographic memory. And he saw inside the book of Exodus that there are information about Maimonides. Maimonides was a great rabbi, one of the greatest lived in the last 1,000 years. He lived in Spain, and then after a while, he had to escape to Egypt. And once he came to Egypt, he became the main doctor of the king there, his private doctor. And he wrote a book called Mishneh Torah, the explanation of all the oral laws, all the 613 laws. That's how his book starts, a list of 613 laws. He explained what does it mean, the purpose of each commandment, and more information. That's some information about Maimonides. He lived between 800 and 900 years ago in Egypt. So when we review the Torah, we find information about Maimonides. Make no mistake, the Torah was given approximately 2,400 years before Maimonides, the Rambam, was even born. So how does the Torah knows how to give us information about a rabbi that is going to be born 2,400 years later? Is it possible that a person can write information about us 2,000 or 3,000 years ago? Obviously not. Let's pay attention to the proof. The Torah says, God says to Moses, don't worry, Pharaoh will not listen to you, and he will not release my nation Israel out of Egypt. I'm hardening his heart to be stubborn and not to give up. Why? Because I want to make such miracles in Egypt that everybody will see the hand of God. And they will realize that you are my children and I'm making all these miracles for you, the Jewish nation. This is appearing in a chapter of Bo, Parashat Bo. It's in the beginning of Exodus, and very interesting. When we see First, the word Moshe is mentioned here. The Rambam's name was Moshe. He lives in Egypt, so